Welcome comrades. In this video we'll take a look at all the Regiments of Renown units for all the DLC factions. As you may or may not know, I've done army guides for all the factions in the game and these units are going to be missing from them. So with this I can fill in the blanks. We'll take a look at every unit and I'll give my opinion on what I think their role could be in their respective army. Let us begin. So first up for the Chaos, we've got the Demon Spew, who are a variation of the Forsaken. The green tabs are how much better they are than the original unit. They've got some improved stats which are going to make them a better fighter, but their standout traits is that they are poison to help reduce the enemy's stats, and they also have a Hex debuff which gives -8 melee attack to anyone they're fighting. I find them to be a great debuff support unit because all of your friendly units around you will be able to take advantage of the poison and the -8 melee attack as well. The Mirror Guard, a form of Chaos Warriors. They are Sigvald's private bodyguards, so naturally they don the same armour as him, and they do look freaking awesome if I do say so myself. The first thing you may notice is how fast they are, which is pretty damn quick for a heavily armoured unit. That of course is the same speed as Sigvald, so they can keep up with him. Can't really guard him very well if they can't even keep up with him. Just like the Chaos Warriors, they remain an anti-infantry unit, and a very strong one at that. Lots of staying power, very hard to get rid of. Swords of Chaos, a melee cavalry just like the Chaos Knights. They're very good at sticking around in a prolonged fight, and they are armour piercing, which is kind of rare for a heavy cavalry. So they're going to be great at taking on elite tier units. They can stay in combat with them, whether that's cavalry or infantry. Obviously want to avoid anti-large cavalry though. And they do have a bonus versus infantry and fire attacks, so I'm going to say that they are an anti-elite unit. The top level infantry units, this is who they should be going after. They're also good at fighting alongside their allies because they can provide a buff to charge bonuses and also a physical resistance. Now to the Weird Spawn. Got some pretty cool colours going on these boys, if you can even call them boys. Do Chaos Spawn have a gender? I don't know. Their differences from regular Chaos Spawn is that they have armour sundering on their attacks, so they're going to reduce the enemy armour by 30, which is pretty damn useful. So this puts them in the debuff support category, so other units can take advantage of that armour sundering. They also have a physical resistance, which makes them a fair bit tougher than regular Chaos Spawn. Summoners of Rage, a Dragon Ogre variation. Other than their obvious stat improvements, they have magical attacks, so they're going to be better against things with physical resistances or ethereal units, and they also have their very own Chain Lightning Vortex spell, for a bit of extra damage. Primarily, they remain an anti-large unit, great for taking down cavalry and monsters. The Soul of Damnation, a Hell Cannon with even more firepower. It does a significant amount more damage than the original, and has a couple of buffs to make it a little bit more effective, but ultimately it is going to be used in the same way, and is pretty much anti-everything really. It's horrible. The Beast Slayers of Baston. These are just foot squires that have been given halberds instead, and they are a damn good anti-large unit. Their halberds mean that they're armour piercing, and they've got armour and leadership, so they should be able to hang with the toughest monsters and cavalry in the game. As their name of course suggests, they are primarily an anti-large unit. Now, the Holy Wardens of La Maison Tal. These are a fancy battle pilgrim. You can see they wield 2 weapons, one full of magic, one full of fire. This makes them a kind of special forces, I think. Great for taking down units that are weak to those things. But really, given their improved stats, they'll deal a good amount of damage to anyone they come across. I'd say seeking out those units that are weak to them though, is a good idea for them. The Defenders of Fleur de Lis. These are a slightly improved Knights Errant, who now have Frenzy, so they're capable of a little bit more damage output, but are still primarily just your normal old shock cavalry, primarily against lighter infantry as they are not armour piercing. Knights of the Lionhearted, a slightly improved Knights of the Realm. They are still anti-large and now have magical attacks as well as the improved stats. They do cause fear and encourage, so this could make them great for leading around a few units of cavalry to help them win any engagements they may come across. Some nice red and gold colouring on these boys with their flaming lances. The Champions of Cunel are questing knights with a punch. Still armour piercing, still a melee cavalry so they can stay in the fight and beat the crap out of everyone, but they now have some nice improvements to their stats. I put them as an anti-elite unit as they are an armour piercing cavalry. It says they're anti-infantry, but I see no reason why they couldn't take on enemy heavy cavalry as well, provided they don't have an anti-large bonus. Lastly for Bretonnia, the Wardens of Montfort are mounted yeomen with a little bit of poison. They also have increased missile damage, so they could be pretty good for supporting your troops or simply damaging the enemy on the way up, as every other missile cav is. They could also kite other cavalries and trick them with the poison, thinking they might be able to catch them. And they have slightly improved melee stats, but really are only going to be good for running down skirmishers still. to the Beastmen and the Destroyers of Drakwold. These are Ungor Spearmen with shields and anti-large spear unit. They've got some improved stats with quite a lot of melee defense, so they should be able to survive relatively well, even without armor. And they're also poison, so they can help bring the enemy down to size a bit. Of course, an anti-large unit, which is something that the Beastmen lack, so it's going to be a nice addition for them. Blackhorn's Ravagers are a form of gore herd with shields. They're improved in nearly every stat and now have Vanguard deployment and stalk, not to mention an immunity to vigor. All this together makes them a very capable ambushing unit, so hide them in the tree somewhere, spring them out at the right moment, and they could do a hell of a lot of damage to anyone in the way. Horrocks Man Rippers, a Bestigor unit that have been given a pretty awesome looking weapon, and are essentially an anti-large spear unit. Why they're called Man Rippers I don't really know, because they're designed to kill large stuff, but their stats are pretty impressive. A very powerful armor-piercing anti-large unit, much needed for the Beastmen. Now for Centaurs with great weapons, Sons of Horus are a heavily armoured Centaur unit. On top of that, they have magical attacks and significantly improved stats, also coming with an ability that can improve their physical resistance as well as their allies around them. Another nice addition for the Beastmen is their cavalry has always been pretty fragile. Take that physical resistance and put it onto a couple of normal Centaur units around you, and this unit can really help beef up your cavalry corps. As if Minotaurs weren't brutal enough, the Butchers of Kolkengard are even more horrible. Improvements to their stats mean they're going to be harder to get rid of. They now cause terror as well. They have an augment which helps their leadership and speed. And on top of all that, they have regeneration. Oh dear. Everyone is screwed, basically. A very dangerous unit that will destroy all infantry. Except anti-large, of course. It's a play on the Cygor now with the Eye of Mor's Lieb. More missile damage, so he's going to be even more devastating. He's got magical attacks now, so no one is safe. But his biggest selling point is the fact that he comes with his own net ability. A very tactically useful spell, of course, going to help you pin down your enemies and absolutely smash them with these massive yellow rocks that he now has. Sweet. Eternal Guard have always been a pretty tough unit. They've now got even more melee defense as well as a few other stats. But this unit is unbreakable and has Encourage, so it's going to be fantastic for helping your front line stay in position. So if you've brought yourself a front line of Eternal Guard, which I think is pretty common, these boys can kind of act as the leader of them and be the one to keep them in the fight a bit longer. A nice addition to bolster Elven front lines. Loex Tricksters, who are war dancers with spears, are, as their name suggests, pretty sneaky. Besides their improvements to stats, they've got two abilities. One that improves their melee attack but lowers their melee defense, and the other that gives them the stalk ability for about 30 seconds and also increases their speed, making them a fantastic ambushing unit. Of course they still are an anti-large unit primarily, but they can now sneak up on them and give those units less time to get away. The Wardens of Cithral are Wildwood Rangers who are now a more effective anti-large unit. They have a charged defense against large as well as the one they get in the forest, and they are armor sundering, making large targets even more vulnerable. However, they do have less weapon strength, but that's because they're now holding a shield, a silver shield no less. So they've got a bit more survivability and are going to be much better at taking down those large foes, not to mention that they have Vanguard deployment and stalk, so another potential anti-large ambush unit. Hawkeyes of Drakira are Way Watchers who can look after themselves. They've got significantly improved melee stats, as well as the Hex Bomb that the nasty Skulkers have to reduce incoming unit speed and charge speed. This is going to help them survive any charges and also help them get away if need be. On top of all that, they now have even more armor piercing missile damage, as well as their ammo causing a leadership debuff of -16. That could be very useful if you can sneak around the back of the enemy and shoot their front line in the back, reduce their leadership and get them gone quickly, and your front line can punch through and just ruin everything. Wild Hunters of Kurnus are your good old Wild Riders with shields, with improvements to stats, and that 36% physical resistance ability that also goes over allies as well. They're going to play pretty much the same role as before, they're just a bit tougher. And lastly for the Elves, the Firebark Elders have got to be one of the coolest looking units going. They are Treekin that have swapped their physical resistances for flame resistances. They're very strong at resisting fire, probably because they are on fire, in case you hadn't noticed. This can be a difficult one to really find a use for, but I guess charging them after anything that has flame attacks is going to be the best call for them, because they won't feel the heat. What? No? Oh. First up on the scales for Norsca, the Icehorn Marauders. Very similar to the regular Marauders, just with slightly improved stats to make them a little more effective in combat, and they have an immunity to vigor, so they will never get tired. A good potential frontline unit, best served going after light infantry. Now for a personal favourite, Brutes of the Hound. They are marauder berserkers, but these fellas are unbreakable, so they won't stop until they're all dead. They also have a crazy amount of melee attack to couple with their massive weapon strength. Add in their berserk ability and frenzy, and you've got the ultimate damage dealer of death unit. What more could you want? Fear? Well, they've got that too. These boys aren't messing about. Next, we have the Beasts of Tashnar, who are Norscan warhounds that are quite considerably improved. They have a 50% missile resistance, frenzy, vanguard deployment, and they are anti-large. So they're going to be great for tearing cavalries to pieces, especially light cavalries, and could even help out with monsters and things as well. A great unit adding to Norsca's anti-large capabilities. And then we've got another freaking awesome unit in the Maws of Savagery. These are armoured skin mauls with improvements to stats and vanguard deployment. Most notably though, they are armour piercing, which other skin wolves aren't. So they're going to be fantastic at taking down those heavier cavalries because they are anti-large as well, in case you didn't know. Add in all the stuff that skin wolves already had going for them, the fear, the physical resistances, the regeneration, and they are a very dangerous unit, especially to anything large. Mist Stalkers are a variation of Fimir warriors with a damn good amount of melee attack and defense. Magical attacks, armor sundering and armor piercing make them the ultimate destroyer of heavily armored units. They also have stalk and vanguard deployment, meaning they can be pretty sneaky as well. They could be a really cheeky unit to have in reserve on your front line, as the enemy won't see them till it's too late. Or you could have them flank round and ambush the enemy. Having them as a flanking unit is especially effective as they do cause terror as well. And last but by no means least, Soul Crusher is a War Mammoth who does not care about you or your children. It of course has improvements over the War Mammoth, but its most notable features is that it has Strider, so terrain is not a problem for it, and an ability to give itself 44% damage resistance, which is just going to stand to make it even tougher than it already damn is. Mammoths destroy all infantry. Simple. So there we have all 30th anniversary Regiments of Renown units. They are pretty awesome, there's some really great ones in there. Regiments of Renown units are great for kind of accenting your army in certain places. Certain ones are going to be better against different factions and things like that, so you have to kind of play with them and learn how to wield them correctly in different situations. And when you do, they will serve you well. I thank you for watching, I hope you've enjoyed this. I'll see you in the future.